Hey, I'm Eli Rainsberry, and over the last couple of years, I've been audio lead, composing music and designing sounds for Die Gute Fabrik's upcoming game, Saltsea Chronicles. I'm going to be sharing a bit of the behind-the-scenes development of the music for Saltsea, including how I composed some of the core aspects of the score and how that affected the outcome of the game's music direction. But first, what is Saltsea Chronicles? Saltsea Chronicles is a story-driven adventure game where you are guiding a crew across numerous islands of a post-flood world called the Saltsea Archipelago as they mount a rescue for their missing captain, Maya. Voyaging on their boat to Kelpie, you can choose where to go and which crew members to investigate with as you explore the wonderful and different island communities out there and solve the mystery at the heart of the game. It felt important to me that because these island communities had different but strong visual identities and unique cultures, that my compositions for the score and soundscape were also different per community. During initial development of the first island, Nyavi, I developed an instrumental Foley palette where I would go through the episode and talk to my art and writing peers about the materials found and weather observed on the island. These can range from natural materials such as stone and feathers through to constructed metals and woods from the boats and buildings. But I mainly wanted to prioritise the more natural environment, including the island's harsh winds blowing through the bushes and chimes which I've noted down on and considered for its soundscape. I reflected this for the base of its soundscape by using one portion of a voice sample library to represent the surrounding winds and ocean of the island. Inspiration for the soundscapes was done in another part by exploring the small stories being told by members of those communities, whether it be through their day-to-day activities or how they communicate to each other. For example, the Nyavi community are usually seen singing or humming when carrying out their everyday activities, whether they may be at their local pub, carrying through work on the cliffs, or performing rituals. So I wanted to feel like I can reflect them more thematically here. Bearing this in mind and following the wind and ocean voice base from earlier, I wanted to be sure to use another portion of voice hums and in some cases higher range voice calls to represent the overall island community. I would then layer with instrument samples that I would gravitate toward when I think about the overall spaces and the people in them, including the crew themselves, depending who may be leading the expedition, which we'll get to later on, or who may have spent a considerable amount of time on an island. Sometimes I would even consider the World Bible's notes on the local wildlife for some part of the island communities. The next couple of examples, I use percussion as a way to represent the pitter-patter of the good cats of Los Gatos and the clicking clatter of the crabs of Fort Alcazar, respectively. I mentioned a bit earlier about how I tried to think about the overall spaces and the people in them, including the main crew members, when I came around to curating certain instrumental textures. But I wanted to be sure to give further thought towards composing in general for the crew. I asked myself, how would I approach developing music for an ensemble cast, and how can I connect them to the communities they visit? I approached this by thinking about who would be leading the expedition at any point during the game, and how would their personalities be read while taking on these expeditions. I observed through playing the game and reading through the main story points that all of the core members of the crew will lead a mission at any given point or get introduced intentionally as a lead up towards possible recruitment onto the boat. So I decided to create little motifs for each member of the main ensemble cast that may be emphasised and variated on more when they take the lead during certain locations or during recurring situations in the game, and also connect them more closely to points of the story that affect them the most. I want to share a small case study of the motif I developed for one of our crewmates, Iris, a teenager with a great special interest in radios and technology. Iris's melody was inspired by a mix of the following factors. They were raised in Nyavi, where I used woodwinds from its soundscape as one part of representing the island, focusing on a set of clarinet textures. Iris is generally a shy character with some youth to them. Iris meets somebody later in the game who they grow especially close to, and I want to be sure their melody could have the potential to be complementary to them in any way. I took a harmonic progression from the Nyafi soundscape and used that as a basis to develop Iris's melody, and I kept to a relatively high range, alternating between short and longer notes. Though I sometimes use different instrumentation in different chapters, I personally liked using a clarinet to closely represent how I felt Iris could sound and feel at any given time. Here was the initial demo I created. Iris leads a few expeditions during the game, 2 of them being on an island called Soso and another on a later island called Minta. I wanted to be sure that any recurring motifs for any characters or situations would be primarily conveyed the most during the main progressive story points over the course of the game. Iris's melody in the context of the following main story points they're involved with ended up sounding like this. So I felt like it was important that I wrapped on arranging the soundscapes first so that I can consider whether any of the crew members had a strong connection to an island or a community within that island that will be visited at any point in the game. For example, whether they may have grown up there or whether they've been very close to a community already. Alternatively, some of the other character melodies were more ingrained to the harmonic bed of the soundscape in a way that felt easy for them to come back home to. Take Stu's character motif, for example, where it emulates the arpeggiated plucky sounds from the soundscape of her home island of Los Gatos more closely. I hope folks who will be playing the game or listening to the soundtrack will hear out for the sort of things I've talked about here, especially the character and situational motifs that I developed that may be heard over the panel sequences we have or during the main points of story progression. I've really enjoyed using those as a framework to help build up and support the stories being told in the game, and with what I do, I try to be sure to support the stories and experiences of the characters and their communities the best I can. I'm going to finish up by sharing with you all what will be the reveal of the Saltsea Chronicles title sequence. We intentionally went with making the music a very different feel to what you would typically hear in game, while still trying to capture the anticipation that you would feel when voyaging with the Kelpie. I was joined by M. Guer, TVMA and Tylen Meyer, who helped bring the piece to life so well. Thanks for joining me here, and please look forward to Saltsea Chronicles releasing later this year.